Okay, so I will still welcome everyone to the conversation. It's Outspoken Opinionated. Of course, I am your host, Edwin Maya. Today, it's a really important topic. It's something that's dear to my heart. I love to be transparent on this show. I love to be transparent in every platform that I'm a part of. 2 years ago, I was diagnosed as manic depressant. And so I remember the stigma. I remember how I felt when I was first told that. I remember I had a good friend who's psych nurse, and she basically told me, you need to go see someone. And so I appreciate therapy. I appreciate celebrate recovery because those are different tools that I use to help me through my mental health issue. But just looking at context, if you guys are sitting here, we're all in America, we're around the world, COVID-19 has happened. And what I've realized is that there's a group of people, there is a set of population that people have forgotten about. And I think it's a population that has mental health. And I think we're not understanding how COVID-19 has affected this population. And so, if you guys have realized, there have been a lot of things going around with people, doing different things that normally they won't do. And so, for me, most often what I do, I just label it to mental health. But just to give you some background information, once COVID-19 started, the Census Bureau decided to send out a survey questionnaire. And they sent it to 1.2 million homes. And from that survey questionnaire, they realized that 60% of Americans fell short some sort of anxiety. 53% of them started worrying. And then 48% was depressed based on COVID-19. Because if you remember, people lost their jobs, their relationship that was strong because there are people who, just life in itself happened. And so, not being the SME, meaning the subject matter expert of such topic, I decided to get someone. And who better than Vanessa Adebayo, someone who in the short time I have followed her, I've grown to respect her, watching her on the Pan African platform where she was speaking about mental health. And I was like, oh my God, I need to get this girl to come and speak. I need to get this girl to my show because I know that there are people out there who really don't understand the implications around mental health. And I think us in our community, which is the Black community or the African American community, African community, Black community, whatever community it is, we really don't talk about mental health. And I think that's an issue in our community. So I'm going to bring into the show Vanessa Adebayo, who also runs a nonprofit organization, which is called Africa Health Matters. And so she will tell us about Africa Health Matters. She'll tell us about herself, what she's doing in the community, and just tools for us to understand what mental health is all about. Because I think we really don't take it serious as it is. And so I think as parents, as siblings, or whoever it is, for you to just be able to cope around these individuals, or even understand them. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Vanessa into the live and then we will go from there. So Vanessa, you're welcome to the conversation.
Thank you, thank you. It's a pleasure to be
I'm
with
so
you
happy
here.
that you're here. I'm so glad that you accepted the invitation from the beginning. You were ready to go, and I really appreciate that. But like I said, this platform is kind of informal. So we do our thing over here. We got people who were sending questions, like I said earlier, and then, we just go from there. But really, I want to know, who is Vanessa? Who are you?
Who am I? That's a good question. If I don't know by now, I think there's a problem, right? Because COVID
Yeah.
19 has, I think, and I really loved how you opened up the show. You talked a lot about COVID 19 and its effect on people, especially with their mental health. And I think a good thing about COVID 19 is it gave us an opportunity to kind of stand still and be in isolation in a sense, but really have time to reflect on life in general and who we are. So me, I'm a global public health professional. I'm very passionate about public health as a whole. Really more so focused on health equity and making sure that regardless of your socioeconomic status or geographical location, you're able to access the proper health resources and knowledge that you need. Um, I've had a very diverse experiences that have kind of um, drawn me back, I guess, to the African continent and have made me really just have like a deeper um, passion for just seeing the development of Africa as a whole. And, getting into this space has allowed me to then focus on mental health through my master's program and being able to do a 1 year accelerated program that allowed me to study abroad in DC, Accra, Ghana, and Abu Dhabi. And so, yeah, with the wealth of experiences that I've had, I've been able to kind of segue into this space. And for the last 3 to 4 years, we as an organization have been championing mental health is a priority, and especially amongst the African community, both on the continent and in the African diaspora. And so I'm really excited to be here today. For me, I don't think I'm any, anything special, but for you to have me and allow me to be on your platform, I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
And this is great, and because it leads us right into the right segment. So, my next question to you is, what brought up the intent with mental health?
Yeah, that's a good question. People ask me all the time, they're like, why mental health? Like, what got you into this space to begin with? And looking back 3, 4 years ago, I actually would have never imagined myself being in this space or even being a mental health advocate. But like I said, I did have the opportunity to study abroad at the New York University while I was pursuing my master's. And during my study experience in Accra, Ghana specifically, I was really able to understand mental health in a different capacity because here I was at the University of Ghana taking a social behavioral class and learning about psychology. And I had a Ghanaian born and raised professor who was also a psychologist explain the importance of mental health, but really also speak to his own experience being an African man and battling with depression due to a major breakup. And I felt that was very vulnerable because never in my life had I seen a man really share his emotion or share the downfall of his vulnerability. And so seeing and hearing his experience or hearing about his experience really encouraged me to really enjoy the class. And then I think a step forward was actually being able to go to a local psych hospital and see, get a visual picture of what the mental health care delivery system looked like. And just by being in that environment, I know not for only me, but for my classmates, it was life changing. Just to witness the environment in which some of these patients were living in, to be able to see the lack of resources, to be able to see the stigma surrounding mental health. I mean, I always tell people this story every interview, and I always say that like we came in contact with a 70-year-old woman who was in the geriatric ward, and she just started profusely crying when she saw my classmates and I. And we were kind of confused, we trying to figure out why she was crying, but she started speaking in her native language, which was Tree, and she was saying that, what did she do to deserve us coming to visit her? And just to give some context, in the 20 years that she had been there, not a family friend, family, church member, no one had come to visit her. And so that to me moved me because it just showed like just our simple presence, just the simple fact that someone cared about her and cared about her well-being. I mean, that to me broke my heart. And I think from there, just seeing that this place wasn't a place that breeded any healthy, any healthy outcome, I just knew that this was a larger or bigger issue that I wanted to address. And so I ended up focusing my master's thesis on the effectiveness of social marketing campaigns to improve attitudes and behaviors towards mental illness, or just mental health in general amongst young adults on the continent of Africa. And yeah, the rest is history. I mean, my master's thesis really is what drove me to be in this space. My master's thesis and my experience is what really drove me to want to even start Africa's Mental Health Matters.
And that's amazing because, like I said, my story from the beginning of the show, where I was diagnosed with being manic depressant, and it was just a major life changing for me, and I was extremely depressed. I couldn't sleep. Like I have gone 2, 3 days where I did not sleep, and I remember going in. I was driving. on the beltway, and this person cut me off. And when that lady cut me off, I broke down and started crying. Like I cried like my mom died. And I remember why having this panic attack, my friend called me and she's like, "Are you okay? What's going on?" And I just like, I don't know. Like that, I've driven all these years. People have cut me over, but I had this. And she said, "What's going on?" And I literally had to tell her what's happening to me. And good thing was my friend is a psych nurse. So she's like, "Wherever you at, you need to go somewhere. You need to go somewhere. You need to talk to somebody." And I remember going into therapy where I thought, coming originally coming from Africa, we don't go to therapy. Then
Right.
I'm a black man, like we don't go to therapy. And I remember just being able to talk my issues out. And I didn't get to take them. I was prescribed certain medications, but I didn't take it because my friend told me, "Don't take it." She said, and that's not for anybody who's watching. If you're watching or you watch this again, if your doctors and all these people tell you these things, you have to do it. But for me, people around this, my support system was greater than anything else. So I had a great support system. And so they literally helped me. My therapist helped me. I had a great friend who was a dentist who was also, everybody was there for me. And I was able to get through that process and be able to become whole, like as I am right now. But I think the stigma and coming from, like I said, I was born and raised in Liberia. And I remember seeing people in my neighborhood who had mental issues. And everybody would call them, "Oh, the person crazy." And after it was like, okay, there are a lot of different disorders in mental health that doesn't lead to insanity. And I think we call everybody crazy. So if you can we just talk about the stigma that affects people with mental health?
Yeah, I think that's very important. Doing my master's thesis, I did a lot of research, and you'd actually be very surprised that a lot of time with patients, or not patients, with people who are dealing with a mental illness, um, the preconceived stigma is so much more greater than the stigma that they're actually receiving. So studies show that people who are dealing with a mental illness actually they feel that people are, they have already preconceived a mindset that people already have their mind made up about them even before they even encounter
Oh,
stigma as a
yeah.
whole.
Yeah.
So I think it's big because automatically when someone, it then says to me that automatically when someone is diagnosed or someone is dealing with something, they're already, the first thing that they're thinking about is, what is this person going to think about me? What is my family going to think about me? What is my job going to think about me? How are people going to receive that I'm dealing with A, B, C, D, E? And so first and foremost, let's all like bring it down a notch. We all have mental health, right? People are like, "Oh yes, because she has mental health problems." No, we all have mental health, and I think, thank God once again for COVID. COVID has done a lot of bad, but it's also done a lot of good, because I see people are finally starting to understand that you can grieve just by losing a job. You can
Yeah.
grieve by just losing, your day to day routine. You can grieve by not being able to see certain friends or family as often as you used to. People are now understanding that mental health is affected. Our mental health is affected in everyone. At some point in time, everyone's mental health is affected, whether it's through your experiences, or the things that you've gone through, or the people that you're interacting with. Our mental health is constantly always changing. And so, as far as stigma goes, I think it's a very big barrier to people seeking mental health treatment. I know that a lot of times, out of fear, people will not go see a therapist. People will not go see a psychotherapist, or seek counsel. And I like thank God for your example that you had that support system in your situation where you could call someone and confide in them about what you were going through. But a lot of times that that may not be the case. And I think it's this thing where, like, especially when you're talking about in the African context, if they see you in a certain area, that person is mad. That
Right.
person is, I mean, I know in Nigeria, for example, this past December, we had our last conference there, and Yaba Hospital is one of the main government hospitals that they, address um,
Mhm.
mental illnesses. And I know that people call it Yaba left because they make it seem like, oh, if you're going to Yaba, you're gone left, you've gone mad, you're crazy. You know what I mean? And no, it's horrible. Like, we
It's
laugh now, but
horrible,
you
yes.
can imagine someone just walking or being in that vicinity, and automatically people are labeling this person as someone that is not sane, quote unquote. I think once again, the conversation is getting better. Like, when I have conversations like this, I don't want to focus on the stigma, because I do think that with
Okay.
all of the advocacy going around, with all of the support groups, with all of the campaigns, with all of the newfound awareness, people are starting to understand that mental health can be addressed, right? And that's in any capacity. It doesn't have to be a full blown mental illness. It could just be you feeling simply sad, by just experiencing something. It could be you feeling down about, interacting with someone, or receiving some type of information, but it's becoming more of a conversation. And I think the more that we talk about it, the more we have conversations like this, the more that we are feel free to talk about mental health, the less stigma that people will receive by seeking the proper mental health care that they need.
And so, moving on, I like how you place that, but looking when people are starting conversations. So, how should people who aren't, what else? I won't say equipped, but there are individuals who there are certain things they're not going to talk about. My daughter, if my child is schizophrenic or my child has some sort of depression, we're not going to have that conversation. And so, how can folks who have these people in their midst, like family member, cousin, deal with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of the time, it's okay. We talk about, people opening up and addressing mental health, or addressing maybe whatever they're dealing with. But it's like, okay, then who am I addressing it to? Right? Who is my support system? What does my support system look like? If I can't even break down in front of a family member and cry, how much more am I going to be able to tell them what I'm internally battling or dealing with? And so I think it's important that we create safe spaces for people. And when I mean safe spaces, I mean being open to leading people to the right resources, being open to just having a listening ear, being open to receiving someone, even if they're not necessarily telling you what exactly is wrong. Because I think building a safe space doesn't happen overnight. It happens gradually. So if I'm your daughter and I'm experiencing signs of depression and I don't know what that is, and I feel that maybe in the past, you've burned bridges where I don't feel like I can trust you. If then something switches and one day I feel, you know, we're in the same space and you ask me, how are you? Right? And not just, oh, how are you? But really, how are you? How is your mental health? What are you what are you thinking about right now? Right? Like, what are some of the things that are bothering you? I'm gonna look at you like, Dad, wow, like, what's
Yeah,
going on, right? And I may not even respond to you at that time. I may not even feel the need to go into details, but that to me, I think is a beginning step to creating, quote unquote, a safe space for a relationship to grow. Because the more you step out of your comfort zone, the more that you create a space where I feel like I can be vulnerable, the more that we are able to establish something. Now, sometimes it doesn't get to that point. Maybe because of generational experiences as a parent, you can't get there. Maybe you can't ask me how I am. Maybe you can't be, open to me being vulnerable. But what you can do is be open to allowing people to receive the help that they need. So I think, it's important for us to be aware of the resources available to us, whether that be a support group, whether that be a local therapist, whether that be a counselor, whatever that looks like, whatever you feel could help the person you love, whether it's your daughter, your friend, your cousin, whoever. I think it's important that you be resourceful and have some type of inkling about what that person can use to gain support. And if you don't know, then it's okay to research. It's okay to ask a friend. It's okay to, call your local organization and find out what resources are available. I think it's time that we be that we stop, blaming, oh, I don't know,
Yeah.
no, the information's out there. Go find it and be the help that you be that person's, support system regardless. You know what I mean? So yeah, those are some of the things that I feel we can do.
And and I will say, I know for me, like I will always use myself as an example because I think I know me. And this is what I do. I remember, when I have a couple of friends who, lost a pregnancy, or lost a parent. Like I had somebody who was really close to me who lost a parent recently. And I remember when I called him, I know, how are you doing? Us guys like, oh, I'm cool, I'm just do. And I let him have his way. And when he was done, I was like, dude, how are you? What's going on? And I could feel the pause. Like he paused a little bit, and then he became real. And then he started to tell me, like, I'm going through this. This is something. And he's rest. And I feel it's like a lot of times when we ask for what's up, they're like, oh, I'm cool. No. How are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, especially in this COVID time, well, a lot of things are happening. People are losing their jobs. Their relationships are messing up. I mean, it's just crazy. And so it's like good for you to ask somebody, how are they doing? Like, what's going on with you? And I'm not afraid to ask that question. My friends know me, people who I'm close to, they're like, oh Lord, you better go deep. I'm like, I'm not going deep. Because sometimes it's like you have something on your chest, or you have something that you really want to talk about, but you need somebody to poke you a little bit so you can speak on it.
100%.
And so going back to Africa, which is where people rarely talk about these conversations. And I remember as a child, I will always say this. I always tell this story. My mom had a friend, and I strongly believe that boy was schizophrenic. He had some sort of stuff like that. Well, and he will walk. When I say walk, he doesn't get in a car. He literally walk from his house to town and walk back. And he was a little off. And I remember having a conversation with my mom. They're like, oh, you got big mouth. And I'm like, no, I don't. It's like, what's going on? What are they doing? And it's like nobody could have that conversation with this woman. I'm like, why you guys don't talk to her? Like, why can't we do this? Like, why can't you guys do this? And so I want to ask you, for someone who have gone to Africa, who have tried this in Africa, what has been your experience dealing with people when it comes to mental health in Africa?
That's another good question. I think, um, so far so good, right? Like, granted, you know, we I have to be honest in terms of the audience in which receives us, and the audience in which receives us, majority of them are young adults, right, from
Oh,
ages 18 and onward, maybe to like 35. And in recent conference in Nigeria, we did get a lot of parents that showed up in support and actually had maybe issues with their child that they kind of wanted to address, and see if they could get the proper resources that they need in order to do that. But in general, I think young people are tired. They're tired of putting up a front. They're tired of um, not being able to be themselves. They're tired of not being able to just freely speak. So we're living in a generation where, and I'm sure you know this just as much as I do, if things aren't going right, people are posting on Instagram, they're writing, long statuses, they're tweeting, they're doing what they got to do to get their opinion out there, even if nobody cares, right? And so I think that we're living in a society now where people are responsive to it. Now, as far as you're concerned with a similar story, excuse me, that you just mentioned about, the young woman not being, not really feeling comfortable to talk to a young woman about her son. Yeah, definitely. I think that still exists. I mean, getting someone to be vulnerable about the health of their child is hard. This is my baby. This is my, my everything. You put all your hopes and dreams in your child, thinking that they're going to reach a certain level of excellence that you've already kind of prescribed. And then when they fall short, or when they're dealing with things that you may not have the proper knowledge about, as a parent, it becomes a very vulnerable place for you to be in. Now, I do think that it's harder to engage with people who haven't come to terms with whatever their child is dealing with. But I think with the proper knowledge, when they can label it whatever, whether it's schizophrenia, whether it's depression, whether it's bipolar disorder, they're able to then kind of move forward and walk in that, walk in that confidence that this is what my child has and we're dealing with it, right? But when you put things under the carpet, which is what a lot of Africans do, and then not address it, you're making the situation worse, and you're also not giving an opportunity for that person to be able to seek the proper help that they need. So I think it's very telling in different situations depending on who we're talking to or who we're dealing with. But in general, I think Africans, our biggest issues are pride. We don't want to seem weak. We don't want to seem like we have problems. But the reality of the situation is that we all have issues, right? We all have challenges. We all have problems. And I think the more that we're able to be honest with ourselves and be honest with other people, the more better that we'll end up at the end of the day, because it'll give us an opportunity to really take on our challenges head on and get the help that we need, you know what I mean, to live better and healthier lives.
So I'm going to switch a little bit. So I'm going to ask you this question. Your organization could have been called America, any country you choose, Nigeria, but you decided to call it Africa Health Matters.
Mm-hmm.
And in this time where we're all talking about Black Lives Matters and all these things going on, why did you guys settle on Africa Health Matters?
Yeah, that's a good question. Initially, this is probably the first time I'm actually going to say this, but initially I put together a proposal that said Ghana's mental health matters, right? Because Ghana was where.
I love Ghana. That's it.
I love Ghana too. I'm not Nigerian. It's Nigerian Independence Day. We have the best show.
So I do love Nigerians. So one of my best friends are from Nigeria, and he literally think like, anyway, I'm not gonna go there because then you're gonna do that whole Nigerian thing.
Yeah, it's Nigerian independence, so we can't even go there.
Yeah, exactly.
Just give it to us. Give it to us for today.
You continue.
Okay. So, initially I wanted to do Ghana's mental health matters because I was, my master's thesis really focused on Ghana in particular, and it seemed like it was the right thing to do. If I focused my master's thesis on Ghana, if I had experience working and implementing this in Ghana, then it just seemed like the logical thing to do to say Ghana's mental health matters. However, I had a friend at that time that told me like, no, why don't you expand this and make it Africa's mental health? And I was like, that's great feedback, because at the time I was thinking so limited. You know what I mean? I didn't think that I had the ability to address such a large issue on a whole continent, but it was probably one of the best decisions that I made to call it Africa's mental health, because not only are we focusing on the continent of Africa, but we're also able to focus on the African diaspora. And I think it brings so much knowledge, like in terms of bridging the gap between the African diaspora and Africa, because a lot of times we only know the main countries like Nigeria, Ghana, Liberia, whatever. But Africa's huge, right? There's so many countries, and I think just to be able to have the opportunity to address such an important issue and on a large scale, it's overwhelming, but I think in the grand scheme of things, it can do so much good. And I think it makes a powerful statement that regardless of where you're from, whether you're from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Liberia, from Senegal, we are a one, right? And our mental health does matter regardless of where you are. So
yeah, and so 2 years ago, normally I go to Liberia every year because my parents live there. And so I was there I've been there a couple of years ago and I've seen this group of people. But this particular year that I went to this area where they have this group of people in Liberia. We call them Zoko. And these are individuals who are substance abusers. And so they, of course, they sell drugs or they are on drugs or whatever it is, they're there. And it's a group of people that you can tell the mental health dysfunction. You can see it, you can smell it, it's like in your face. And so I realized that you guys do focus on youth mental health. And that group of people, the group that I saw, I don't think anybody was at least 35. They were from the ages of 12 to probably maybe 20, maybe 27, 28. And so
Wow.
I see you guys focus on youth. So why was that an area that you and your organization decided to get close to?
Yeah, that's another good question. I think initially, in terms of just coming from a public health perspective, I was thinking about health behavior change. And
Yeah,
I thought, okay, if we look at this from a health behavior change perspective, it is so much easier to get a young adult to change their habits than it is to get 45 or 50-year-old to change their preconceived mindsets. You know, when I'm 40 or 50, I'm kind of set in my ways. I've had experiences through life. I've dealt with things that have made me really understand and think about things a little differently. And I felt, to engage young adults in a social marketing campaign would be a lot more easier. You know, we're the highest, users on social media. We're the ones that are, listening to music. We're the ones that interact with, social influencers. We're the ones that will attend a conference, depending on what it has to offer. So I just thought, okay, this population, their population we can work with, their population that we can target, their
yeah,
population that will receive what it is that we're putting out there. But as we've expanded as an organization, we've actually expanded our scope as well. And so going into 2021, we will be targeting women who have been sexually and physically abused. We will be focusing on inmates who are in the process of rehabilitation or getting out into the free world. We will be also focusing on students. We'll be focusing on young professionals. We'll be focusing on men. So we're targeting people, and then also understanding that going into the community and really having the opportunity to give people meet people where they are. I think a lot of times people think, okay, in order to address mental health, I have to be in a therapist's office or I have to be going to a psych hospital. But I think the power, especially on the continent, will be us bringing mental health care delivery to them. And when I mean mental health care delivery to them, I mean making sure that we're localizing um, the efforts of mental health awareness by training barbers, by training people in the marketplace, by training hairstylists to be able to essentially counsel people and have the ability to understand when someone is going through a mental health crisis. So training people to understand the importance of mental health and be able to, at least have the basic knowledge to address mental health in any capacity, I think really also changes um, the scope in which we're able to help people.
amazing. And so I had the opportunity to be on a platform a couple of days ago that was related to substance abuse because the opioid thing in crazy. And so you being in public health, I'm also in public health. I was with the double AMC and we had to watch 16 in Recovery. It's an actual TV show on MTV that talks about
Wow.
kids who are teenagers who are basically addicts. And so they walked through their lives. They talked about it. I think it's like a 4 or 6 series show on MTV, and we had to talk about it on this platform. And so one of the things that really, really got me was growing up as a young kid. I never understood mental health connection with drug addiction.
Yeah.
I never did that. And so I don't know if that's something that you can talk about, because I think a lot of people in Africa, that's what it is. Those group of kids that are gathered, those kids in the market who are doing crazy, who people call crazy and stuff like that. It's their addiction to drugs that has messed with their brain, that has led them to this path of mental health that we can't connect. So I don't know if there's some sort of correlation or something you can talk about, but I just want to put it out there.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I personally, in terms of um, the connection,
You may have finished
a
it. Oh,
professional, so I don't want to,
yeah,
but what I've seen though from just my work and just my understanding is that it may even be that someone is diagnosed with something. So I think everyone has, some people have triggers, right?
yeah,
And so essentially, when certain things happen, when life presents itself in a different shape or form that you're not familiar with or you're not able to really cope with, it may be that that triggers you into dealing with a mental illness, right? Whether that's depression, whether that's bipolar disorder, whether that's anxiety, whatever that looks like for you, or whatever that trigger does to you. I mean, well, it'll present itself in a mental illness, and that's just with some people. And I know that sometimes dealing with that then turns people to drugs, to overuse drugs. In really, I think in response to dealing with whatever they're going through. So it could be that, God forbid, I lost my mom. And now that has triggered me to go through some type of anxiety and depression. And then in that, going through the anxiety and depression, I then turn to drugs to make me feel better. You get what I'm saying? So
yeah,
I feel like sometimes it's a domino effect, or it can also be similar to what you're saying. Maybe by being peer pressured, or by social influences, or by cultural influences, I kind of come into dealing with marijuana, and maybe marijuana doesn't affect you the way it affects me, and
true.
my overuse of marijuana affects my brain in a way that doesn't affect your brain. And in response to that, I end up showing signs of depression mixed with schizophrenia or something. So the big takeaway here is this: we're all very different. The way I function is not the way you function. And I think we all have to understand that life will affect us. The choices that we make will all affect us very differently. So, from what my understanding is that um, it could be genetic. It could be that there could be an imbalance somewhere in terms of different chemicals. There could be already a present mental illness that's already present, and then in return, you're not willing to deal with it. Going back to putting things under the carpet, you're not willing to deal with it, so then you turn to drugs and abusing alcohol or whatever the case may be. There's so many different scenarios that could happen, but I think ultimately, when you mix whatever you're dealing with, or just in general, whenever you consume any type of drug, you are now susceptible to so much more bad health outcomes, or negative health outcomes. And I think it's very important that as Africans, we don't dismiss certain things. I know, like, especially in African culture, especially in the music industry, it's not frowned upon to smoke. It's not frowned upon to heavily drink. But these are things that are affecting our bodies. These are things that are affecting our mind. And I think um, that very same blunt that you see maybe Burna Boy smoking or whatever, and you then decide to kind of go and do the same thing, could genuinely change your trajectory of your life just like that. And so we have to understand and educate ourselves on the importance of practicing healthy behaviors, and understand that these things that we do, whether it's recreational, whether it's to release stress, whatever the reason is, it can definitely affect us mentally and
Yeah.
physically at any time. So
And
I hope that makes sense. I don't know,
yeah, it
right?
does. It make great sense, because I think the issue is and normally we forget to we don't know who. Like when I ask the question, "Who are you?" is a question where it's like you really can define who you are. And when it's coming to substance abuse or when it's coming to drinking, whatever people do, a lot of people don't know the limits. They don't know what is it that they can do and what is it that they cannot do. So when you have reached a place in your life where you know who you are, you know there are certain things that you cannot do.
Cannot do.
I
Yeah.
personally know there are certain things I ain't messing with.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain things where there are people who they tried when they were young or they did whatever they want to do and it mess you up and you'll be like, okay, you need to stay away from it because that's not going to work for you. Because what I have learned is there as teenagers or whatever it is, there's a part of your brain decision making that has not developed yet.
Yeah.
It takes a gradual process to get developed. So you have these kids who are 12, 13 years old who are taking meth. I mean, you some child say he was 9 years old when he started taking methamphetamine. So you got meth, and then he said when he take meth, that means he needs to snort coke, and when he snort coke, that means he needs to take heroin, and when taking heroin, he needs to do LSD, and when taking LSD, he needs to take some pills. So at 12 years old, miss makes all that stuff in your system. Your brain don't even know what it's supposed to do. And I will tell you, I went to a fairly all white university, and I was invited to a party, and they called it a pharmaceutical party. And at that party, everybody is supposed to bring whatever in a cabinet. You put it in a bowl, they shake it, and you take what you want to take. And whoever invited me to the party, I was like, what? Okay, okay. Apparently, you don't know what part of the world I'm from. So let's have this conversation. We don't do that. Like, I'm not doing that. But that's the norm. So you have these kids who go to these parties or go to these events where you're mixing all that stuff. There is Zoloft, there is Xanax, there is this, there is that, there are all kinds of pills. There are pills, and we know all these pills in this country or around the world have side effects. You take something that doesn't work with your body, you go another way. So I think that's where I was able to connect mental health when it comes to drug addiction, mental health, and all that kind of stuff it is. But then I also want to ask you as parents, as people who are, parents or guardians or brothers and sisters, how can we act appropriately to our family members or friends who have been diagnosed and are labeled as schizophrenic, they're depressed, all that stuff? How is it appropriate that we should act to these people?
Um, with compassion, with love, with understanding. That's what I preach when I talk to people. There's no best way to be there for someone. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, people respond very differently. Once again, what I'm realizing is that people are very different. What I may find comforting may not be what someone else finds very comforting. But I think as a standard, showing love, showing compassion, showing understanding, these are three things that I feel like really help people understand that the support is there, right? And ultimately, you know, not worrying about what other people think. I think like once again we've really put ourselves in such a position, not only in the African community but in the Black community as well, where we care too much about what other people have to say. We care about what society has to say. We care about what church folk got to say. We care about what our friends and family have to say. Ultimately, like I said, when you're able to label what it is that your family friend, your brother, your sister, whoever is, whatever they're going through, when you're able to label that and understand that as a family unit, you are going to deal with whatever diagnosis this person has received. There's a certain level of confidence that allows you to be able to deal with it and understand that this is what life has presented you, but regardless of anything, you're standing firm and you're standing there for your family member, whether that means you dealing with them and making sure that you take them to therapy every week, whether that means you making sure that they're taking the right medication, whether that means making sure that you're there when they do have, a fallout, or an episode, whatever that looks like for you. Just understanding that this is a journey that you've decided to be a part of, knowing that you're going to love this person unconditionally, knowing that you're going to support this person unconditionally, making sure that you're going to love this person unconditionally, and showing compassion and understanding that, although you may not understand it, although your neighbor may not understand it, although your family and friends may not understand it, once again, this is the reality of what you're dealing with, and you choose to understand it and understand that person, for what it is that they're going through.
Thank you. I don't think I asked you really for you to go into depth about your organization and currently what are you guys are doing in Africa or around the world. What are you guys currently doing right now that people who are watching or who will watch later can join? Like, how can they be a part of this?
That's a good question. I mean, for the last 6 months, we've been under reconstruction. At first it was just annual conferences in a different African country, which, don't get me wrong, is stressful enough. But we realized that, in terms of health behavior change and really being able to make an impact, it requires us to do more work on the ground, throughout the year. And so, in the last couple of months, we've been able to implement country teams in Rwanda, Nigeria, and Ghana. And they have great leaders. We have our country ambassadors who lead each country, and they have teams in which they focus on our social enterprise, our community engagement, and our social marketing campaign. It looks very different now as far as what we're our strategies in which we are engaging people. But through our social media engagement, through our social marketing campaign, we're able to use social media as a tool to be able to bring awareness to mental health, and also bridge the gap by allowing people to understand the proper resources available to them. So, through podcasts like this, through podcasts that we're actually going to be starting soon, through I'm really excited about that. Through our Instagram page, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, these are all ways that we're able to, kind of get our message out there. And then, of course, through our newsletter as well that we recently started. Now, through our social enterprise, we're able to kind of fuel, income, or find finances or resources back into the organization, but also, provide resources. So we have our T-shirts and our apparel that we're building right now. We have a T-shirt that anyone can purchase online on our website, but we want to continue to build upon that and offer a variety of other, items that people can purchase. We also have a mental well-being program, or corporate mental well-being program, that we'll be implementing shortly, with different organizations within the African continent in order to aid in their employees' productivity and performance in the workplace. We want to make sure that our employers are responsible for maintaining, a safe space, a psychological safe space for, their employees to be able to come to work and understand that they have the proper resources available to them to prioritize their mental health. In addition to that, we also will be implementing, a service learning trip where we're going to be bridging the gap between Africa and the diaspora, where we'll be offering a mental health experience for people who are abroad, whether they're doctoral students or young professionals that really want to understand Africa as a whole, but also get to understand what mental health, the state of mental health looks like on the continent. And so we'll be, providing, trips throughout the year next year, for people who are interested in that. And then also, okay, were you going to say something?
I'm interested.
Oh, you're interested. Yay. So we can put you down on the list.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to hold you to that.
Yes.
So, yeah, there's so much going on. I could go on and on and on. Through our community engagement, like I said earlier, we are definitely broadening our scope by reaching out to, young professionals, similar to the Pan African Leadership Conference you were able to attend by us, students in universities and in high schools, being able to, like I said, engage women who have been physically or sexually abused, being able to engage inmates. So these are all things that we're still building upon. We are quite young, but I think with the right people and the right volunteers on ground, we really can make a difference. And of course, as far as anyone in the diaspora that may be listening to this, we will be building our diaspora team towards the end of this year. We actually will be sending out a call for volunteers very soon for anyone in the diaspora that would like to use their platform, their resources, their network to bring mental health awareness to their communities through our platform. So, there's always a way to be involved. Ultimately, in order to do the work we need funding, we need money. So that's always a thing. And then we also need just support. And thank you. Like, for example, just having you have me on your platform this evening, that means a lot to us because we never know who can stumble upon this podcast or this conversation and really get a better understanding of what we're trying to do and achieve.
So I see you guys are having your 2020 conference is the mental health conference in Rwanda. And so
Yes, virtual conference.
can you just tell us what it's going to be, what should we expect, and all
We
that?
got a lot planned for y'all. We got a lot planned for y'all. You do
Okay.
not want to miss it. We've been working really hard. We have a team in Rwanda that's been working tirelessly towards this year's conference. We have guest speakers, we have musical performances, we have a panel discussion, we have some group therapy breakout sessions. We have a lot of gifts and prizes lined up, and we have a lot of short films. We have some short films that will be showing, um, featuring our current committee in Rwanda, talking about the state of Kigali, Rwanda, but also talking about the way that mental health has affected their country. Unfortunately, every year, unfortunately, this year we're not going to be able to be in Rwanda. Every year we end up going to countries, and this year we plan to be present at the Kigali Convention Center, and we had it all planned out. But due to COVID, the trajectory of things did change. However, I really do believe that this year's conference is going to be powerful because we can ultimately expand our reach. For people who wouldn't have been able to be there in person, now you can tune in from your home wherever you are, and we're really expectant that this will be a really great conference that brings a change, but ultimately impacts the lives of people to prioritize their mental health and create a mental health culture.
So where can people go to register for this conference?
In our bio, we have set up a link tree in our AMH Matters bio. We'll also be connecting the link to our website. Right now, disclaimer, our website's actually down. It's not going to be up until tomorrow. For some reason, I think Squarespace is going through something, but regardless, by tomorrow, we should have the Eventbrite link available to people on our website, on all our social media platforms, and yeah.
Okay, great. So I would say thank you for coming here. Thank you for giving
Thank you.
us all this information. I think it was great. People really, really enjoy this. I'm already getting text messages from people who are saying, glad someone is talking about dealing and helping with mental health in Africa. I'm getting messages coming in. Someone just sent a comment. Someone is interested in volunteering.
Yes,
So,
we're always looking for volunteers.
how can they get in contact with you or your team?
They can email us at africasmentalhealth@gmail.com.
Okay. It's Africa Mental Health at gmail.com. Okay.
Africasmentalhealth@gmail.com.
There you go.
With an S.
What's an S? So Africa's.
Yes.
Okay.
Mental health.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. And also, so after this, what are you expecting? What can you expect folks who are watching or who will watch this again? Because we do have a huge platform on Instagram who this loads up on Instagram at 9 p.m. tonight. And so what do you want to get? What do you want them to get away from this?
I think we can all do our part. Our organization really is built on unity. It's built on collaboration. We're not going into any African country to do this by ourselves. We understand the importance of partnership. We understand the importance of getting together with policymakers, advocates, influencers, stakeholders, young adults, anyone really interested in making a difference. And through that, we've been able to build a larger platform. I just want to encourage anyone listening or anyone that comes in contact with this platform to do their part as an individual, whether it's getting your mental health first aid, whether it's going the extra mile to ask someone how they really are, whether it's you just educating yourself on the importance of mental health and the different mental illnesses. Whether it's you just being a good support, to a good supporter or a good friend to your, someone that is dealing with a mental illness. Whatever that looks like for you, let's just all do our part. Let's show love. Let's show compassion, and let's show support to the people that, to everyone really, not even anyone in particular. Like we
Yeah.
all need it. Mental health affects us all, and so going the extra mile to just be there for someone, it goes a long way.
And I really want to tell you thank you for this, and for those who are watching. This was a segment with Vanessa Adebayo. She's with Africa Health Matters. We talked about mental health from his infancy up until when. We give there are great tools in here that can help you out. But this month, the conversation is really focusing on mental health. So next week, for those who will be watching, we will have a therapist, and we'll have somebody who has battled mental health through his lifespan. He's currently in his 30s right now, and he's just something that he's dealt with. And he will tell us about his challenges, how he overcame it, and how he was in the support system that was part of it. And it's funny because I was part of his support system. And so that would be that. And then we will go with somebody who's currently working on, which I'm going to connect you with her. She's working on an organization to really support women who are affected with mental health. And so I think it would be a good, I will try to connect you guys, and you guys
I
can
would
have.
love that.
And then at the end of the month, I have self love coaches. So I have two people who are doing their own businesses in self love, and they're really because at the end of the day, when it comes to mental health, it's all your wholeness develops around self love. And so I have these amazing women who will talk to us about self love and give us tools and techniques to deal with self love. And so this has been amazing. This was the
Amazing.
conversation. I've spoken opinionated. I had my girl Vanessa giving us
You
information.
know,
It was great. I enjoyed. And so those who will be watching, we're done. Thursday again next week, 7 p.m. I say thank you for coming. We appreciate you, Vanessa. And
thank
we
you.
hope
It was a great time. Thank you
today
so much.
2020 conference in December. And I promise you I
Yes,
will be
awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
there. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.